They turned out to be completely unreliable assholes.
Hey, Tim.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's not the morning anymore.
Good afternoon. It's not, but it's a dreary day here in LA, so it feels morning-esque. And you're looking at me like, all right, what are we gonna talk about? What are we gonna do? But first, I want to say hello to everyone listening too. I'm excited to see you, Tim, but I'm excited, to see you who's listening right now. You may not know it, but I can see you. You're looking good. You're looking like you're listening to our podcast, episode 21 of Dismembering Horror.
No. 20.
20. Thank you. Sorry. I had written down 21 because anyways.
We'll get there.
Welcome to episode 20. It's a big one.
Yeah.
We're out of the teens.
I know.
20.
Can you believe it?
We've done 10 and then now another 10 of these.
Is that what we did originally? We did 10? Like, before we released any?
Oh, yeah. When was our sort of break that occurred?
Yeah.
Our break occurred after, I believe, 7 episodes. I think we came back with Mandy.
Oh,
like
Mandy.
We had watched The Ritual and then came back with Mandy.
Let's just go watch Mandy again. If we're going to watch a movie that starts with M and it's a woman's name, let's do Mandy.
Not Maggie?
And not Maggie.
Yeah. Well, that's the film that we watched. Is Maggie. Do we have anything? I feel like it's been a while. We've had the holidays. Is there anything applicable to catch up on?
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone. Happy 2019.
Yeah. I don't know. No.
Yeah,
I'm
don't
not
think
wearing
so.
my robe.
No, I know it. You're right. It's kind of sad.
I should have.
It's I don't know.
It's hanging right next to your head.
I don't think we're in the best. We're in the best spirits. Not only was this movie, I don't know, it's just weird. It's been weird New Year's for me, so.
Yeah. Well, and inside scoop, we're recording like 4 hours or something later than we were going to because Ryan slept in.
And I've lost my wallet, essentially. I don't carry a wallet, but I found it again.
Yeah, so you didn't lose it.
It was just that kind of morning.
You just misplaced it temporarily.
But I'm excited to be here and talk about this film we aren't excited about.
I know, me too. I'm sort of curious how this is going to go.
Well, should we check out the trailer and then get into it?
Yeah.
All right, so here's the trailer for the film that we already mentioned. We're going to be talking about today, Maggie.
Don't come looking for me. I'm safe. I'm fine.
Mr. Vogel, I would normally release someone with this type of infection.
Dad!
I need you to follow the rules here. Quarantine is 8 weeks in. She's probably going to show more signs of aggression and hunger. When that happens, say your goodbyes and get her straight into quarantine.
I made a promise to your mother that I will protect you.
Wow, that trailer.
Hey, it's got Arnold in it. We gotta watch it. I'm excited
Well,
to
and
see
remember,
this, right?
I said, like, Arnold was my action hero, my default action hero growing up. So I was sort of excited for this.
I was really excited for this because of Arnold.
Damn it. If you can't tell, based on what we're saying or implying, let's summarize it.
Yeah. Okay.
You want me to do it? Damn it.
Do you want me to?
Yes.
Okay. Arnold. Okay, so the Vogel family. Arnold is Wade Vogel. Abigail is, you guessed it, Maggie Vogel. The titular name, the titular character. So Wade's daughter, Maggie, runs away from home and has run away from home and gets the zombie virus that's destroyed our world.
Right.
And she calls home or something. Arnold finds her again, even when she says, "Don't look for me, Dad." So our story begins with Arnold picking up his now infected daughter. And over the course of the film, she becomes more infected, and that's it.
Yeah, I guess. And our boy Wade has to, like, cope with the impending death of his daughter. Mm-hmm. That's kind of it.
When he's in it, sometimes we're just off with her.
Yeah. Man. You know, there's like, one of the reviews I was reading was sort of like, this is just a big allegory. But I'm like, for what? You know what I mean? Like, accepting death of your kid?
Or for the sort of like greater societal things going on as far as our mistreatment of each other when one's, you know, like the sort of the cops having disregard for.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
Well, I guess my point was that it's like that's a pretty blanket statement.
Yeah, like, I don't know. There's this one actually, it's hard for me to even kind of like wrap my head around what to say. Like, what was the filmmaker driving at?
Folks, yeah, we aren't going to try to extend this episode to be more than it has to be, but Tim and I have, I think, less notes than usual because of, I think you summed it up exactly there, Tim. I'm on the same page where I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Well, we could, so was there anything to add to my summary? No, he's trying to cope with it. Great.
They live they're rural.
It's
It's
rural.
rural, so farms.
It might as well be black and white rural.
Farms and crops.
Yeah.
There's some sort of thing about that. Don't destroy the world thing.
He
something.
moved out as an Austrian boy.
Yeah.
No, I don't. We don't.
He's an everyman.
Unlike sort of later tier Arnold films where they'd reference his Austrian accent, this one they do not.
Nope.
It's always kind of fun to be like, oh yeah, you know, where's he from originally? Sometimes they've done that. Anyways, how would you rate this film, Tim?
God, you know what? I'm not joking. This is a very rare. Just avoid it. Just don't do it. There are plenty of other, you know, you pick, right? Like depressing, guy has to come to terms with a thing, or girl has to come to terms with a thing. Movies that take place on farms.
I say avoid it. Yeah, I also say avoid it.
I just kept rubbing on, like, I remember, you know, maybe halfway through the movie, give or take, I spent the rest of the movie just kind of like throwing my hands up.
Right. Watch the trailer and your imagination over whatever this movie is going to be better.
It is.
And even like even Arnold can save it. I hate saying that, but it's true.
Yeah.
I at some point when watching it, I'm like, I kept going like, oh, well, I am watching Arnold, like, you know, doing things.
Yeah.
So maybe
sure.
is it just great because of that? Is watching Arnold Schwarzenegger exist in a zombie world? You know, this is all we're going to get of that probably.
Yeah.
But even that, I
know.
Say avoid it.
So let's do things that worked. And because I think almost inevitably, no matter how we approach talking about this, we're just going to kind of be criticizing it.
We got our sections.
So let's just barrel into things that worked.
What worked for you? What worked for you? What worked for you?
It worked like a charm, Smith.
What worked? What worked for you?
Well, like I just said, what worked for me was watching Arnold Schwarzenegger do anything.
What do you mean? What do you mean do anything?
His screen presence, like, is always...
Okay, so just him Like
Like,
are you saying that you liked watching him be put in the circumstances of the story?
I'm saying I could watch him just sitting on a chair
Okay.
and enjoy something, enjoy that for itself.
Cool. That's interesting. Because I feel like that's kind of
Which is
all
essentially
that
what
this movie is.
Yeah, it really is that.
In a way.
It wasn't enough to save it, but that in itself, he's just the person who's like always fascinating to look at for me. And that's why he's an action hero.
And I agree. One of the movies that really sort of I love Arnold and I like all his early stuff and it's crazy and for what he is and his skill set and whatever, the movie that really made me go, this dude is more than just this action hero trope was True Lies. There are moments in True Lies when you really, really like James Cameron hones in on this deeper thing that Arnold has, like his essence has, that I think is sort of the foundation of why he's a good action hero and why we like him. But I think Cameron was able to actually sort of point at it in True Lies, and you go, oh shit, that's right. There are things, he's so compelling in certain circumstances and frameworks.
He's especially compelling when he's determined.
Yes. But he does have the ability to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
So this isn't like some secret. You know what I mean? Like, True Lies was 20 years ago or whatever. Or more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was probably 20 years ago, give or take. Maybe a little more. And so to see him... what I'm saying is I'm not surprised that he's compelling in this movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, awesome.
He is
right?
in anything he does, I think.
Well, and so they lean in on that.
Well, watching him do anything was great, but there were those just like especially just choice brief moments of where he actually killed a zombie, where it was like
I just blew out the whole mic laughing.
But it was great. Like it happened so quick. There was the gas station one at the beginning, the neighbors, and that's it.
Right? It's 2.5.
But it was just sort of like what I said earlier of like, oh, technically we are watching Arnold Schwarzenegger exist in a post-apocalyptic zombie world here.
Yes.
I don't know quite apocalyptic. I don't know. But
yeah. Well, that's an interesting.
It was just like, oh great, I technically just watched Arnold Schwarzenegger beat down a zombie like that.
Sure.
When I could isolate it to just that moment, a portion of me was happy.
Yeah, I was with that. I think for me, kind of one of the only things that really, it's hard because in isolation, a thing that worked in the broader context just didn't. But in isolation, there are particular shots, like single shots that are like tableaus in this movie that are fucking beautiful. There's one of him sitting in not an armchair, but like a lawn chair kind of thing up against the barn wall at night. That is just beautiful. It looks like a painting. There's one with him holding the torch out in the crops. He's about to burn his crops. It's a beautiful shot.
Yeah. I had that too. Actually, I put it more as just like pretty some pretty wide shots.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I thought why that especially worked for me is because this, which I wanted to bring up later, but this film is kind of like the pinnacle of this like visual aesthetic of like going the stark, dreary, whatever, like totally sapped of color.
Yeah.
This felt like, and even the way the camera is handled, all that stuff, it felt like this is as I said, yes, the pinnacle of this kind of style of almost like an indie film moody thing. And so to see which is kind of a mixed bag, but to see some successful visuals done under that constraint or modicum, whatever, I thought was neat.
Yeah,
because it was like, okay, yeah, if you're gonna be doing this style, what can you just do it under? It's like, oh, there's some shots that actually this style lends itself to, and they've done a few of them.
Sure.
Great. Thrilling.
I know. Well, I don't want to just I don't want to counterpoint that.
Yeah, exactly. We could do it too. Well, I was trying to think too. It was a couple days ago. We watched it now. We usually try to do these closer, but like actual just any kind of moments I was racking my brain or scenes that actually was like, there's something in this. Even though it was lame because there was the section where it was Arnold less and it was kind of Maggie off doing her things. I'd never seen it quite before, I don't think, in a zombie movie done this way where it was a more realistic tone, even though this isn't realistic. more non-comedic tone. Where you had two people who are, I mean, I guess this is all Walking Dead is, I just haven't watched it, but where you have two people who have been infected by the zombie virus interacting with each other in a group situation.
Oh, yeah.
Where not everyone's, that's the case. So it's like you have the teenage hangout party and like Abigail Breslin or Maggie and this other teenage guy, they both have the infection, and then everyone else is kind of just like, we aren't able to relate to you, but they are able to relate to each other.
Right.
I liked their exchange and just that as an idea and seeing that play out.
Yeah, and we're supposed to kind of get on board with the idea that everybody's still figuring it out. Like nobody has really the full information of what this thing is.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a casualness to what stage they're in.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and what's going to happen? The big question is, like, do I go into quarantine or do I not? And like, what happens if I do? And, is it what they say it is? So there's this, confusion and lack of information about that. And I think that concept is interesting. And like, we haven't seen that a ton. Usually it's sort of like we're watching a thing post-fact. Like they've either post-fact or post-definition of presumed fact.
Well, I don't know if it's... I mean, yeah, I guess it is like how you're putting it as far as, how is the world at large sort of dealing with this situation. But I saw it more as a kind of like situational microcosm of like, I guess to make it real here, but like if you have someone who's dying of cancer and is given a year's left to live and is hanging out with people, how is that going to be different than if they had 6 months left to live, a month left to live, a week left to live, days left to live? Like, how does that interaction within the group sort of change and reflect? At which point is the year start to look more like a week,
Sure. But don't you also think in that scenario, the way they set it up, one of the key factors is that everybody sitting there doesn't actually know if the two of them who are infected are going to die.
I thought that was a given.
See, that to me, I don't think that it's a given.
But like if you have a zombie disease, you are turning into one. That's how the world seemed to be established.
I guess so. But there's this whole scene of the kid, the guy being like, well, if it comes down to it, I'm just going to shoot myself in the head.
I think
so. Is that implying that they know that that everybody is on the same page? He's gonna die.
No, that just meant like once it's
rather than go to quarantine and suffer till you're dead.
Yeah, it didn't. I don't at all think it meant if it doesn't happen to them. I thought the disease.
So I guess that's what to me it's hedging a little bit because there's this vagueness to me. It seemed like it came across as casual vagueness as to what's going to happen. Like, no, in other words, everybody seemed kind of cool with the fact that the two friends are fucking going to die.
Well, yeah, that was it. They seemed like in that...
Like, didn't that seem weird to you?
Well, that is what I thought seemed interesting was the like, at a certain point, maybe they got out of all the heavy stuff at the beginning of when they met up, and now we're just all hanging out as friends,
Yeah, I guess that it's an interesting choice to
like,
make.
It could have been more interesting to show
that's where
her,
where we're at in this scene.
To show her showing up and them kind of being like, oh, hey, wow, and getting their hugs out of the way. It felt like that could have already all happened.
Yeah. Yes, it could have.
Or that the filmmakers were just choosing that they're teenagers and they just don't really think about that stuff, which was weird. Yeah. That was the thing with this film. Okay, this is what worked for us.
Slippery slope here.
Well, I want to okay, yeah, the visuals, that scene. So So I feel like a good reference point throughout this whole remaining review is going to be to another Avoid film that we watched, which I think is very, very similar to this one.
Wait, we had another. Oh, The Cured.
The Cured.
I felt the same way. Very early on, I thought to myself, "Uh-oh,
The Cured.
we're in The Cured again."
Yep, exactly.
You thought the same thing. Damn it.
So to start though, framing this with a thing that worked for me, I guess. Since that's the section we're in, having her. So The Cured was like this movie, except at least this movie had one trackable thing to it that made it feel a little more movie-like. It still didn't feel like a movie, like how The Cured didn't feel like a movie.
Mm-hmm.
But while The Cured had nothing to hang your hat on, this movie had her Maggie's deterioration.
That's true.
It had her...
Yeah, a little bit of body horror.
Yeah, well, it just had her, like, her conversion into being a zombie as a trackable element.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, this movie goes with her...
Or an attempt to make it that.
Well, it's like, that's literally, that's what's happening
Yeah.
during this.
Yeah.
That's what I have to hang my hat on.
Yes.
If I'm lost at any given point, which I am throughout this whole thing, there's that.
True.
So
okay, I'm with that. I'm with that.
In reference to The Cured and it being all out bad by The Cured, it basically is, but they had this one thing that, like, if I was trapped in a room with this movie for eternity,
Oof.
at least I would have that.
That's a brutal, brutal fate.
Isn't it?
Oh. Oh my God.
But if you were going to have Maggie or The Cured...
That's tough.
Yeah.
Man.
At least The Cured has Ellen Page.
I know. I really like Ellen Page.
I really like
Do I
Arnold
like Ellen
Schwarzenegger.
Page more than I like Arnold?
Yeah.
Good question.
Who do you like to see subjugated less? These
Oh,
films.
man. Well,
Again, then that was just me trying to find something that...
I know, and it sucks. It sucks to have to, like, reach,
Yeah.
you know? I just... Yeah, it's really hard to not just be like, well, there's all sorts of stuff that didn't work.
Yeah.
I honestly don't think I don't have anything else.
You liked the actor
I like when
who
her
plays
I like Jolie Richardson.
Yeah.
But I didn't like her in this. I'm sorry.
Right, you got a reaction when from
The
you
finger?
the finger.
I was like, cool, something's happening.
And when there was maggots in her worms in her wound.
Oh yeah. Yes, I want that. I want a whole movie of that.
The
I want her. So
I like
am I like no. Yeah.
I-
What I want. Here's what I want. This is not what didn't work. This is what I wanted this movie to be. Can I do that in what worked?
I want to know now.
Sure. What I wanted this movie to be is two things. The body horror of I'm a zombie and I'm decaying and I know I have impending death to face. So that's cool. I'm into that. I want to see that movie happen. And to add to that movie, having this everyman character, somebody compelling like Arnold, or I mean, Arnold's not an everyman. So seeing him do that is cool. It's against type, so that's also cool, but I think that's a little trite, but whatever. What I want is to watch Arnold really deal with watching his daughter deal with decaying. That's heavy shit.
So were there any moments that did work for you, even isolated? That
I don't think
doing that.
I don't think those two things intersected.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Fuck. It's impossible for me not to just talk about what didn't work.
I liked the
I want that movie.
I liked how he planted the flower garden for her mother.
Oh man.
I don't know if I liked that. I just liked having visuals of flowers in it.
Sure. Okay.
Even it just like her, I was just as depressed as the characters watching this movie, and even a flower bed on film just was a welcome addition, I guess.
Oh man. Brutal. I don't know what else to say.
Should we move on then?
I guess, yeah.
What did not work for us?
Sorry.
All right, let's do it.
It's not ready yet.
Seems to work okay.
No, something important's missing.
What did not work?
Okay, so the biggest problem to me with all of what we're saying is that everything that all three things that we just said, or whatever they are, anything you bring up are almost immediately undercut by the broader execution of the movie. So the flower idea, cool, goes nowhere, right? There's nothing behind it. It's just a look at a thing, but there's no point. Like, okay, he planted flowers. Magically, flowers grew on her mom's grave.
So I thought
that's cool.
You saying,
is there a point?
So what you just said as far as what you wanted out of this movie, I think that was a good way to start to get at the overarching undercurrent problem, however you put it, of this.
Yeah.
But is there another kind of, in either kind of, your overlying emotion in response to it, or just sort of in filmmaking terms, broader strokes you can put why it wasn't working? Like, I just want to start here. I have my own, start big and kind of work our way down. Like, what are overarching ways to put what wasn't working?
I mean, I guess, yeah, sort of what I'm saying in the broadest sense is, if you're going to have a movie that is predicated on watching a father cope with the impending death of his daughter, right? Like, take all of the context of, like, it's a zombie or this or that. It doesn't matter, right? Like, at its core, that's all this is. That's what this movie is. A father having to cope with watching his daughter die slowly. That's, you can go in a lot of directions with that. It's a heavy subject. It's ripe for lots of stuff to support that and to put that character, both characters, but mainly the father character, into positions that make that harder.
Mm-hmm.
And really, why? So in their execution of that broad thing, that broad story, his only conflicts are cops want his daughter, like they want him to put her in quarantine. We get 2 scenes or 3 scenes where one time they're like, oh, hey, you should deal with this eventually. A second scene where they're like, okay, clock's ticking, you should deal with it. And then a third scene where they're like, okay, we're going to take her. And he says, get the fuck out of here. That's it, right? Like, that's not enough.
Yeah, how I start to try to get at, okay, well, let me just back up here. What was not working about this? Like, how was I feeling watching this, is kind of my jumping off point. And for me, the sensation was very much like The Cured, was the whole movie, it feels like the movie is about to start or pick up.
Sure. Yes.
Like, every time, like, I remember there was a part sort of like a quarter of the way through. It was sort of after that initial chunk of him discovering her. I think it was like around, it felt like a first something happening, like with her finger, maybe when she cut it off. But I'm like, oh, okay, now the movie's picking up. But then no, it just kind of would just sort of slink back to this plotting nothing.
Well, do you think it's like that what they're trying to say in broad strokes is this is an allegory for denial?
I don't think the movies, I don't think we can put those kinds of questions on it.
Well,
I don't think we can give it that.
Because to me, that's a really big problem.
Yeah.
That, like, if there's a concrete thing that didn't work, it's how these characters are all reacting to the circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
It never felt like it made sense to me. There's so many weird, like, somebody does a thing, and my immediate reaction is not what it should be. My reaction should be, ooh, that's a fucking fucked up position to be in and have to deal with. At no point did I feel that. I constantly felt like, that doesn't make sense that that's how you'd be dealing with this. So, for example, having the doctor, Vern, horrible name, by the way. Don't name people Vern. It's just cruel.
Just watch the Ninja Turtles movie with Will Arnett's character as Vern.
Oh, God. All I can think of is Ernest Goes to Camp.
Yeah, or all the Ernest movies.
Right?
Hey, Vern.
So the doctor, for basically inexplicable reasons, is allowing Arnold to perpetuate having his daughter not go into quarantine. I guess because they're friends? Was there any deeper substantive
I saw it as
reasoning?
just like in
They're
being
friends.
No, I didn't think there was any extra special treatment. I just thought it was in his doctoring. He's like, oh, that's good. You know, based on the specifics of the disease, he's like, okay, it could take this amount of time for it to kick into gear, but this is like on the longer end of the spectrum. So we just hope for kind of the easiest transition within this.
That's what he's saying, but he is lying. Like they he lies to Maggie. The doctor says, here's the lie. It's going slowly. I'm going to write that on. He says to Arnold after that, I'm going to write on the chart that it's going slowly, so don't worry about it. Like he's fudging the numbers purposefully. Why? What is his motivation to do that? Because he's buddies with Arnold?
Because he just wants to do anything he can.
But that's my problem, is that it creates these holes of like, yeah, but why are you doing that? I need a reason. Or at least I need something to hold on to. And this is something we said about The Cured, is we felt like we didn't have enough to hold on to. It was why like, people are doing what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I put like, it feels like everything that happens in this is an aside.
God, yeah.
Like that's, I guess what you're just saying that describes essentially that's what I was feeling. I don't know. Like at the ending, you know how I was saying, I thought the whole movie feels like it's going to be picking up.
Yeah.
That lasted until the ending where she says goodbye to, you know, she kisses Arnold, sleeping Arnold on the head, and then goes.
You think maybe she's going to eat him.
Oh, and then she jumps off the roof of 15 feet.
I'm
or
sorry,
whatever it is.
That is a fucking insult.
Like
that
onto
ending is
dirt
insulting.
and grass, right?
Yeah.
So all that aside, though, which I did have down too, like when it felt like one of the, I think like The Cured, like when the credits came up, it just felt so lame. I'm like, that was the ending. Because I think what I had gotten...
Yes!
Because what I had gotten geared up for, I think, like in the ending, was with him, you know, sort of talking off the cops and fighting off the cops, and then her jumping out the window. I'm like, okay, here's the part of the movie where it's going to feel like a movie where they're, like, actively trying to escape and drive away. Something maybe about the trailers. I thought this was a movie about the two of them kind of on the lam. But consequences. Yeah. There are none. Right. So
even the main character, he suffers zero consequences. Yeah. If your whole movie is predicated on him waiting for a moment where he has to decide how to kill his daughter, and they take that away, they took it away.
Right. Well, I know.
Then it's, what the fuck?
I thought it was
doing?
Building to like, okay, Arnold, you're given these three options. So that means it should naturally be is him trying to go outside of those three options and seeing how that gets put into conflict. And that's what I thought the movie was ramping up to. But it's like, no, she's just going to kill herself.
Story is choice, right? Like we're essentially watching any story. We're engaging in it to see what choices and like what the character is faced with and what they ultimately choose to do about it. In this movie, they eliminate his choice. That's horrible.
Right. It felt like the first half of the movie was like, okay, setting up and sort of having this tease of Arnold's has to deliberate all of this and what is he going to do and how's he going to react to it. And then that just totally tapers off like halfway through, aside from the one scene where he sort of gets in a tizzy with the cops. Yeah, it was like, what did all this add up to? Nothing.
It's pretty upsetting.
I didn't understand. I mean,
can I right turn into something that's sort of just technique filmmaking stuff? visually this desaturation thing.
Wait, I do want to get to that. But
Okay.
Can we keep it on these kind of like story things
sure.
first and then move on to that?
Okay, cool.
Okay. Like once they so there's this idea in it where they let us know how horrible the quarantine like situation actually is.
Right.
Someone says like they tell you they're gonna hold your hands in your bed as you know in your last moments, but that's now not how it is. We all get put in the same area, humans ripping each other apart, blah blah blah.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, if that's what the case is, shouldn't it be easier like it lessened, if there was any conflict in this, it lessened the conflict of like as if the cops and everyone defending the quarantine system had some sort of in the right to be coming off of. Because it just kept making me being like, well, why not just tell them, like, if this is the situation, shouldn't they understand why you don't want to give your daughter up to it?
Right. And I think that they attempted that with the doctor, that the doctor is the one person who like has some compassion for the reality of what's going to happen to her. And he's saying, fuck, let me give you the option B.
Yeah.
But it goes nowhere.
Right, but just there's the cop who's kind of his friend, and is like, all right, this is how it is, but this is just how it is, and I still want to help you out. You think if you just told that character, hey, yeah, but this is what the quarantine is, you assume you know this. Don't you know this?
Right.
Don't they all know this? So that seemed to like undercut any semblance of this sort of, oh, maybe there are people who want to help out there. Like there should have been a bigger dividing line of like a more like hard totalitarian police force that kind of, is more representative of how horrible the quarantine is.
Well, and they tried, right? They tried with the scene with the boyfriend where the SWAT team comes in to get him out, which I just made it felt very out of place and weird.
Right, it was out of place. It was like was a kid too. Like they're doing this to a kid. Yeah,
so it to me, honestly, it feels like a third draft.
I always think a third draft is when it kind of comes together for the first time, like a movie. This felt like a first draft to me, where it's just sort of like, what is stuff that can happen in this setting and in this situation? That's what a first draft kind of sometimes is more for me, where it's almost like the sort of, when I did like the intentional, not great first draft, where it's like, okay, I just have these semblance of characters. I just need to throw them in the situation and write down what I see in order to have something to work from to then build it into a movie. Okay. This felt like that.
I'll compromise. This is a second draft.
Okay.
It just, man. So like,
I wrote, for being an interesting situation, it was completely uninteresting.
Yes.
Unpack that, Tim.
Well, there's only so many times that we can look at sort of a Terrence Malick-esque, like, wannabe, sort of visual long shot of somebody gazing off into nowhere before I'm like, yeah, that's cool, kind of, and sometimes it's visually pretty to look at, but it doesn't matter. The visual does not matter if there's not context behind
hollow.
It is completely hollow. It's like, I just don't care. I can go look out a window too. Right? Like,
I'll watch that.
Yeah. I just it irks me to see it's almost it's cliched, I guess, ultimately. Mm-hmm. Like the girl looking out, in the pickup truck, in this particular angled shot of her looking out the window of the pickup truck, like kind of just gazing off. It's like, I've seen that shot a fucking bazillion times. I do something else, please. Anything. Like,
it was just one of those films where
it's like, oh, that's the shot that you put into an indie.
Yeah, exactly. It felt like this was one of those films where you can just feel the filmmakers being like, getting a sort of inaccurate reassurance that they're making a movie because they've seen the things they're capturing before, when that should actually be your indication that you aren't doing it right.
Well, and I think there's further evidence to sort of this them not getting it right in there's behavioral things, and the first time Arnold walks into the hospital and sees her, there's this weird nothing reaction between the two of them. He like walks through the door, she looks up, she sees him, and I think she stands up, and they kind of just stand there for a beat, and then he walks over and they slowly embrace, and then they stand hugging with no real change in sort of behavior or emotion or anything. We don't cut into either of them. We just are still on this wide shot. And it's just there for 15, 20 seconds, which is kind of a long time. And it's like, well, it doesn't feel like anything. It feels like we missed the cut point, like we went too far. So it feels like they're trying to evoke something by extending this moment, but there's nothing under the moment to begin with, and there's no filmmaking like sort of technique to guide us in that moment.
You just made me think it's the difference between where, like, as if they present that moment in the editing, so say to themselves, oh, there's something here. I don't know what it is, and that's okay.
But it's making me feel something.
But it's
so
making,
yeah, like it's sort of like the rule.
Sorry, but yeah, what I want to say, what was interesting about that is that can also be a good thing. Like Terrence Malick is like, there is something here. It's
right.
Good because I don't know what it is.
That's right. So that's what I'm getting at. So I think there are two sort of versions of this. There's the version where you just are letting the camera roll and you're sort of waiting to see if something happens and comes out of it organically. And if you catch that gold, you go, fuck yes, we got something. We just kind of it's like, when you're directing a thing and you see that there's some electricity happening after the scene is done, right? This happens a lot. A lot of the time, you hold off on saying cut because you're like, let me just let the actors be in this moment and see what happens, because sometimes some weird shit happens, and there's, even in them waiting for you to say cut or waiting for the scene to be done or whatever that is, weird stuff happens and you go, ooh, there's like electricity in the air because there's anticipation of a thing. And capturing that on film sometimes is really exciting. And then you've got a thing where you go, I'm going to just leave this in there because it makes everybody, like, the hair on your neck sort of stands up because you're like, what is going on? This feels like they were trying to manufacture that purposefully, and you can't manufacture that. It's not a thing.
It's as if they were like, I think this could be this when it was happening.
And when it wasn't, they chose to keep it in.
Mm-hmm.
That's weird. That doesn't work. It feels weird. It's like, well, now it's just, like you said, it's just empty.
It's as if like, oh, because it looks the same, maybe we're just, missing it, why it's not working,
Instead, it just feels stilted and not compelling. It's like it's like if they were hugging in that moment. I was actually waiting for like Abigail to like look into the camera and be like, "Are we cut?" You know what I mean? It just felt bad. It didn't work.
Yeah. All right. So can we move on to the look?
Yeah, let's do that.
So this film has that stark, dreary, devoid of hope. Like
sure.
Some shots were essentially, I already said this, like essentially could have been black and white.
Yeah, I actually thought to myself, I'd rather this whole thing be black and white at this one because of the inconsistency of the desaturation.
So also, that's just to keep going down the list of like the 2:3:5 aspect ratio, the bigger widescreen bars, and the camera technique that I'd sort of describe as both sort of jumps between the handheld like close-ups as well as the stark locked off like shot,
yeah,
wides.
And a lot of the close-ups have that kind of macro, like almost what do you call that, kind of a shiny, glowy, like floaty
as far as that
them.
Grittiness, it was just like that gray grittiness was like the Cured again.
I know,
so
I agree.
I have that as our reference point too.
Yeah. But then you get this wonkiness when you desaturate outdoors. And so if anybody is wearing anything green, it turns into this like teal kind of, to me, very unpleasant, not a color in nature.
Yeah.
A perfect example of this is in The Aviator, when they're on the golf course in The Aviator. And the reason Scorsese did this is because he was trying to match the type of film stock that a movie would have been filmed with at that specific time. So fine, he had a reason for it. It still is atrociously ugly to me, and I hate looking at it. I'm like, the grass is literally fucking blue.
I love it in that movie.
So
I love The Aviator, yeah.
But I want more natural. And it's so extreme to me that my brain just fucking, it's like fucking blows up. But I think this is a problem. If you're going to desaturate for this bleak effect, and you're not doing it enough and retaining this weird non-color, this teal color in the trees or in the grass or whatever, that's a distraction. And then when you cut from that to like they did this a few times, they're in this desaturated outdoor shot, and then they cut inside, and Arnold's wearing sort of a yellow, like checkered shirt, and that yellow is really, really bright, and the browns are really, really brown. It's too inconsistent to me. That's why I say just make it all black and, if you're gonna do it, just go fucking black and white.
I think
then,
it's
at
good
that point.
you mention the specifics of just like how colors looking a certain way make us feel, because what I just kind of want to zoom back out and sort of try to approach this as when let's compare this with an example of when it is working. Like, what's the difference between something like this that's just makes me feel depressed being there in a bad way, like I'm just depressed, versus like I picked as a good example of this starkness was like 28 Days Later is sort of a go-to for me, as far as it has that it's utterly dreary and
That's
stark,
true.
but in such a way where it's like that film puts me in the horror of the situation. It puts me in the intensity of the situation. And so now I have that as the framework, and then I think we can pick apart the reasons, from there. But the first one that came to mind for me, as far as trying to figure out that differentiation, when it's working, when it's not, is that it was that there's in Maggie and the Cured, they still try to insert this sentimentality to it that just does not mesh at all with the dreariness for me. It only sort of makes it so it's like if the sentimentality, the kind of sentimentality they're trying to put in it, like, just there's no room for it, or it can't exist, or it's not appropriate for this kind of nihilism and starkness, where it was like in 28 Days Later, it sort of you have this glimmer of hope that you kind of are hoping for at the end, that kind of like maybe shows up a little bit, but up until then it's like you're completely underwater. There's no chance.
Yeah.
Which is weird, because that's a good thing. When you're describing it, it makes you feel like, oh, that sounds more depressing, but it's not, because it's working as effective as a film.
Well,
but
and
here I was just depressed watching it.
There's a trajectory, and here it felt like we know the end of this movie, right?
Yeah.
So if you know the end, this is like an old rule that I learned years ago in like scene study class. Do not play the end of the scene, right? Like, the actors don't know the end of the scene. We, the audience, we might know where it might go, but if you're playing the end of the scene at the beginning of the scene, you have nowhere to fucking go. And this whole movie is playing the end of the movie. And then we get to the end, and they fucking say, just kidding, we're going to do this other thing. So it's even more fucked up that you're getting the worst of those two things.
Right. The whole movie just feels like an extended ending to a film.
Yeah.
It does.
So that's a huge problem. You have nowhere to go if you, like, it's okay to have a movie that you know where the end is. Because then it's not about the end. It's about the trajectory of how you deal with the impending ending that everybody knows. And you can do a lot. You can
Right.
fuck with the audience. You can fuck with the characters. You can have them, they have expectations of where it's going. So fuck with their expectations. Have weird shit happen. Like, have the cops fucking, like, if it's an issue that the cops come in and they're like, no, actually, we're the authority. We have to do this. If you can't half-ass that moment, and I feel like they really did. Arnold should have fucking chopped that guy's head off with the axe. Have it go there.
Wait, can you connect this to, again, why this was like the bad kind of depressing, or the doesn't work kind of depressing?
Because when you know the end, right, and you just lean in on that it's depressing, it's going nowhere. We just are sitting in this idea of we're in a depressing world and everybody's depressed and we're going to get long shots of people looking into space being depressed. Nothing is actually happening.
Yeah.
And so for me, if you have a movie where you know the end and you know it's a depressing world and it's drab and bleak and whatever, put the characters into a position to face that.
Yeah.
They're not facing it.
Right.
They're just there.
You're right. It needs to be like, oh, that's what I thought this movie was going to be. I thought it was going to be, we've set up Arnold has these 3 options, but because he's Arnold, he's going to be like, fuck that, I'm going to Cuba with her and going to hold out until we come up with a cure.
Sure.
Like...
Yeah. Or have his decision to avoid putting her in quarantine have actual consequences outward.
Mm-hmm.
The sad thing is they wanted you to feel like they had consequences inward, and they didn't even have that. That sucks. But they missed. But have outward consequences. The cop says it. He's like, I'm trying to protect the fucking town. If she gets out, if you let her get out, like the 2
Right.
that he killed, that's a good setup, right?
So how is that sort of thing working in a 28 Days Later?
Oof. That's a good question. I have to remember how that movie plays out. What's the actor's name? Gleason.
Brendan Gleeson.
Brendan
yeah.
Gleeson. So it sort of happens with him where he's the hardcore, like, survivalist sort of guy, right? Like, he's prepared and
Has a warmth to him.
yeah, but he's pretty much saying we're fucked, so I'm going to do whatever I can, like, to not
He has the daughter.
tempt fate, right? I'm going to protect her at all costs. They show him the unintended consequence of him letting his guard down. That's the moment, right? Like, his character defies his core belief by letting his guard down, by being like, look, we're out on the road and it's beautiful out here. So he has a change. Like, the consequences of the progression of that movie cause him to change who he is in a moment, and that actually ends up having, costing him everything, right? Like, he dies because he lets his guard down, because he changes his core belief, right? If Arnold's core belief is protect my family, this is I'm kind of not making a good analogy, but the outward consequence has to exist. Well, it doesn't have to, but I think it should exist in these movies, right? Because then they have something to bounce off of. They have something to change throughout. Like, and those changes can be bad decisions. They can cost you. This movie doesn't seem to cost anybody anything.
Yeah. Well, I think
even with the fucking wife of the 2, that she keeps captive, the husband and daughter, she keeps captive too long, they get out. Nothing bad actually ends up happening with that.
Well, like, I like what you said earlier about how you explained how this movie, how Maggie, it has its ending. Yeah, how it's depressed throughout because it's stuck in its ending. It's depressing throughout in a bad way. Well, and when you put it that way, as far as like, it's, just sort of from, as you said, from the ending. 28 Days Later and other films, they can have this dreariness that works they can have the dreariness be sort of its main color and flavor throughout because we're given some sort of sense of hope.
Right.
You know, or that there could be a hope. You know, we don't necessarily think, we think it could go either way. When Maggie, it was, I don't know if it was so much that there wasn't any sense of hope, but that there wasn't even a movie to make me like question whether there was going to be that. You know, that question wasn't there in the first place at all. It was just like default dreary. Did that make any sense?
It does, and it makes me think of why we watch a movie that is about something depressing. And often a tactic that we use to get some perspective on the mortality of humans or life or whatever is that you get these in the face of really dire consequence. You get these little glimmers of humanity. This movie has none of those, right? Like, just a moment of like, let's forget about the fact that we live in this horrible world and you're gonna die.
Right. You want to see them like enjoying
eating
Twinkies or a can of beans or whatever.
Yeah, just something that, I mean, that's the stuff that we sort of, you get kind of a perspective on. And you go, oh, fuck. And that actually is more heartbreaking because you go, God damn. Yes, there is beauty in the world, even in this fucking awful world.
So Maggie's version of that was like the flower garden.
Right, and it's like it was sort of a weird side note.
Yeah. I thought you'd think it's beautiful, just like you.
I can't do Arnold, so I'm not even going to try.
I don't know.
I think that's it. Great. I don't know what else to say. It sucks because it's, you know.
I don't know. I feel like I could be... I don't know. I feel like my brain's broken. I feel like I could sort of dive us off a cliff in a interesting way in a better head state, but I just don't have it in me today.
Yeah, and I get that. I mean, you know, to me, it's sort of one. I hate to be like hard, like angrily hard on the director and be like, you suck. But there's an indication of a lack of attention to detail in this movie, throughout this movie, a bunch of them. One example is this. You have a SWAT team going into this house to grab this kid. Take that for what it is, whatever. There's a cop in SWAT gear with an M16, like a big rifle. And as they're walking up, he's holding it up, like pointing it at essentially the back of the head of the cop in front of him. That doesn't compute. Like, you should know that. I mean, I'm not a fucking SWAT guy, but I would imagine that that's probably not proper procedure to be walking up to a house with your gun up when you have one of your cop friends in front of that gun. Right? You have the gun down until you get to something that you would raise the gun at. And so little details like that undercut the attention to detail that the director, I think, should have. Like, I would be like, hey, dickhead actor, keep your gun down. You would never do that. And so that may be a weird example, but to me it is indicative of a bigger problem of lack of thought. Like, really, really spending the time through every detail of the story to have it live in a real world.
Yeah, I think that helped me arrive at, so why is this so bad is why I keep trying to answer. And yeah, it's because when you have something this serious toned, you need to have like that level of detail and thinking of things out. You're right. It's essential. It's absolutely essential.
Otherwise, you're undercutting yourself left and right.
Yeah.
And they did. And the ending is the biggest undercut of all.
So, and that's what puts it on the Cured level, is that it's...
I want to see, and just like the Cured, they cop out on her moment of like, she should have fucking pulled the trigger on the baby, right? She should have pulled the trigger and the gun goes click because she used the last bullet on the zombie out in the street, right?
Yeah.
Not doing that undercuts the whole momentum of that ending. In this, not getting to see Arnold have to fucking decide. She can kill herself, that's fine, but we never even got to see him have to
Yeah,
be
that's
in
why I
the
said it
moment
felt
of
like there was
decision.
still so much more movie left. I
Yeah.
was glad when it was over. I'm like, oh, thank God it's over. But I was also like, oh, it's over.
Like, have him fucking get to the roof. This is not a good ending, but like, I would have been better
Wait,
with this. Have
stop.
him get to the roof, have her trying to jump off, have him grab her, catch her, so she's, he's holding her about to fall, and she tells him
And
to
she
let
looks
her
up and
go.
goes,
So, just no, she could just be like, just let me go. Right? Like, that's really on the nose, but I'd take that over what we got.
Well, I just liked the idea of then, he sees her in zombie form for the first time and is like, I guess I have to let her go.
Sure.
She's no longer my daughter.
And then he fucking slams her skull.
He lets her go. She falls 12 feet and is just like, has a broken back and is like, because that's how far the fall was.
And then he fucking jumps off and like body slams her.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be cool.
Different movie.
And her,
yeah, I
and
don't
her
think
head fucking explodes.
It's kind of tragic because I don't know if we could ever convince Arnold to be in another zombie film after this. Maybe he'll be
Probably
in
not,
Zombieland 2 as a cameo.
Okay, maybe.
I don't know. I just want to see him kill some more zombies while we still have him.
Yeah.
Before we clone him.
Oh well.
All right, let's go into things of note.
Okay.
This should be interesting.
Okay, we already talked about it, but just to put it in this different context, we described the look of this film down to the camera and visually, blah blah blah. But this is what I already said. But I just thought it was interesting that this is like the pinnacle of this look for me. Like, of a certain time, we're able to say there's an indie film aesthetic, and then on top of that, there's a sort of dreary as all heck, no hope, no optimism in it kind of look on top of that.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was interesting to say, okay, when we, as an example, want to know what that means or what we're talking about, this film, Maggie, the year 2015, is the pinnacle of this look. Whatever that means just in our evolution of filmmaking.
Yeah, I think we're kind of, like, when we say that, it's an indication that we're kind of done with that trope, right?
Well, it means once we start to see it spoofed is when we're done with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed when I was looking into this that this script, it was written by a guy who worked for NASA, which I think is cool. But that it was one of the scripts that sort of, there's a thing called the blacklist, which is it's sort of a, I don't know, for lack of a better term. Can you describe what the blacklist is?
Well, that was on my other thing of note. It's like an annual. Well, we sort of know of it as an annual like competition almost year, where it's like, oh, what were the top scripts in the blacklist? But it's sort of like an ongoing circulating list of what are all the good unproduced screenplays, where they sort of get upvoted almost by different assistants or people who have read them and pass them along, saying what's a good script. So this film was
in there
in the blacklist, which is beyond me.
I want to read the script.
Right.
I want to see what, if any, there is differences. There's bound to be, like any movie.
I wonder if it was just the idea of it, because it is good on paper as far as just, let's just do a serious drama that's focusing in on exactly this aspect of the zombie film, which we haven't really done.
Well, and I also imagine that that's a really stark script. There's not a ton of dialogue in this movie, right? So I wonder what is sort of being said in the script to describe the tone or what's going on or what people, like, even what characters are thinking, things like that. And maybe it just didn't translate per this director's vision.
Is your curiosity so large, Tim, you actually want to read this script?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think I can get a hold of it? Probably.
Yeah, probably.
But not. So this is the problem, is trying to find the actual script versus the script based on the resulting movie.
Yeah. You can either find it or you can't. I don't know.
All right. Well, I'll look.
Well, I thought that was my only other thing in things of note, was that it was on the blacklist.
Kind of mine too. Yeah, I mean, the fact that they got Arnold is pretty amazing.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that's what allowed them to then make it? I don't know. Who knows? Who cares?
Well, yeah, he produced it.
Great.
So, yeah.
All right.
It was a $1.4 million budget.
Maggie.
that movie does not feel like $1.5 million.
Are we done with Maggie? Can we be done with Maggie?
Yeah.
Is there anything you want? Okay, maybe if you say it loud enough, we'll hear you. Is there any last thing you want us to say that you'd like to say about Maggie you'd like to hear us respond to? Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
Yeah, we didn't think so either.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, what do you think about that, Tim?
I think I fell asleep.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Tim missed your question or comment. So that means we're going to move on to recommendations.
Oh, shit.
Is that our intro for recommendations now?
Oh, shit. Oh, man.
Is it because you don't have one?
No, I do, but I don't remember what the name of it is.
Well, mine is nothing too like on the forefront that I just saw, but it's one that, as far as films in recent years, it's just a standout film for me in recent years. I know I've mentioned it to you, Tim, before. We've talked about it, but I just want to get the word out that more people need to see Foxcatcher.
Oh, yeah.
Came out a few years ago now. It's Steve Carell, Channing Tatum, is it Mark Ruffalo, and it's the filmmaker. It's great. He did the Moneyball and Capote. And I first saw his only other film is called The Cruise, which is it's a documentary, a black and white documentary on this eccentric tour guide in New York. So I remember seeing that way before he made these other films. His name is Bennett Miller, but he's just kind of up there now after this film Foxcatcher. As far as like filmmakers, I'm very, very excited for whatever film they have coming up next. I've heard this film described accurately, I think, as a horror film in slow motion, Foxcatcher. And yeah, as I just said, I think it's on point. It's like if Maggie is representative of like a film with that feels like it should have stuff under like going on in the undercurrent but it doesn't have anything going on at all. This is one of those films that's my favorite kind of films, Foxcatcher, where it's just so loaded. Oh, yeah. And like there's a lot to pick apart about. And it had just some of my favorite scenes in recent film history too, where it's just like, this is loaded, there's stuff happening here, but it's like, it's so like, it only in film watching it play out could you ever do it, because it's not like you can say, oh yeah, it was the scene just where it was this and they were doing this because they were going through this. It's not as simple as putting
it's way deeper than that.
Yeah, which is just the best
has
kind.
Like attention in it.
The performances are just they bring it.
Well, and also talk about how you shoot Stark.
Yeah, exactly.
That movie is as stark as you can get, and yet you're never feeling like
right. And also a good example of getting lost in the film, like you sort of aren't sure when exactly, how long this has last been since we're cutting in. It's sort of example too of when that can be used for good effect, like a P.T. Anderson movie almost.
Yeah, and the consistency of the look of that movie is really working. It's to its benefit, whereas, in Maggie was the opposite. The inconsistency is undercutting it. That movie is so fucking crisp and clean.
Yeah.
It's so good. And in fact, I would, off of your recommendation, say definitely watch the documentary on Foxcatcher. I think it's the documentary, is called Team Foxcatcher. But watch the documentary after you watch the film.
I went through a big Foxcatcher phase, or just like, but I don't know if I actually saw the documentary.
It's so good.
I just watched a bunch of old news clips and sort of read all about it and read the making of. But...
Well, and that's why I say watch the doc after you watch the film, because it's that much more kind of mind blowing what the film does.
Yeah,
and how beautifully they're depicting this really fucked up story.
Cool.
So my recommendation, my actual one, is kind of a soft recommendation. It's a fun. It was fun.
a soft recommendation. Go on.
It's on Netflix. It sparked my curiosity. I'm not saying it's a 10, but it's called Seven in Heaven, and it's got some fucking interesting stuff in it. And I kind of just dug the vibe of it, and it's well done.
Wait, what kind of film is it?
It's horror. It's sort of, it's teens. And Seven in Heaven, Seven in Heaven, it is like you go in the closet for 7 minutes or something. Yeah, 7 minutes and make out or whatever the fuck you do. It's predicated on that, but then some supernatural stuff happens to the two who go into the closet.
Oh.
And there's a little...
That's one way to put it.
Yeah. There's there's some... You don't know if it's time travel, or you don't know if it's necessarily like interdimensional stuff or alternate universe stuff or whatever, but
it's just an erection.
It's some cool ideas. Yeah, it's just an allegory for boners. But I kind of dug it. It falls a little bit apart at the end, but not, for a Netflix sit and just throw something on.
Stream it.
I was glad I did it.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Well, I can give Foxcatcher a 10 out of 10 recommendation.
Oh, yeah. No.
Recommendation. By PSA, please watch it.
I give Seven in Heaven a 7.
Okay. Perfect. Out of 7?
No, out of like 16.
Okay.
No, that's too much. Out of 12.
Great. Foxcatcher is 10 out of 10. And we gave today's film Maggie an avoid.
Yeah, sorry to say.
Which means you should also probably just avoid listening to this podcast. So thanks.
That's so true. Disclaimer.
Because we encourage you to to watch the film with us. But I guess not in these cases. We did the dirty work for you.
Yeah, that's true.
And if you're just a listener, then we thank you as we always do. But we thank you especially now for... Hopefully we just did the job for you. You can understand what it was without having to subjugate it to you. And we're keeping it less than the total running time of the film. So it's not technically wasting as much time.
Well, and yeah, maybe hopefully from what we're talking about, you get something out of how to avoid...
How to do Stark well, how to do Sirius well.
Yeah, hopefully. I don't know. It's like maybe we know what we're talking about,
now,
but probably
Can
not.
we wash the taste out of Maggie and figure out...
Oh, can we
with the film that we're going to watch next week and pull it from Tim's...
Is it my turn or your turn?
It's your turn.
Is it really?
Mm-hmm.
Shit balls.
Because I'm pretty sure I was like,
you gotta shake it up. Shake it up, Brian. Okay, here we go. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
I'm grabbing this one. Wait, I only want one. Okay. We are going to watch... Oh, you wanted to watch this. Ghost Stories. It's a UK film.
It's a UK anthology film.
That's right.
Tim, this was the one I think we saw trailer for it when we saw
Cured.
The
That's
Cured,
right.
And I'm like, I'm excited for this. This looks good. I've heard good things about it. I wanted to watch it with a friend the other night. I'm like, I think actually this is on our list. I gotta wait. I'm really happy it's here.
Yes.
And I've been on an anthology kick, so
you love your anthologies.
Yeah. Well, it's more like I'm extinguishing them. It's called research, which is the best kind
oh,
when
that's
it's
right,
just watching horror films.
Oh shit!
Great! I'm excited. We're gonna finally see it, and I think it's. You know what? I'm willing to put maybe not money on it, but I'm willing to put something on it that it's gonna be better than Maggie.
That's a safe bet.
Right? Exactly. That's why I'm willing to do it.
Cool, dude. Do we have anything else to say?
You can find us at dismemberinghorror.com if that's not where you found us.
That's true. You can find us on Instagram at dismemberinghorror.
Mm-hmm. We
post stuff on there and talk to people and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm at Tim Aslin on all those things too.
I am Ryan McDuffie. Ryan McDuffie, McDuffie.com is my portfolio website.
So fancy.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
My name, there it is. All right, that's where you can find us. So
yeah,
until next time for Ghost Stories, which will be actually episode 21.
Yeah,
looking
we get to drink.
Right, the first year we can drink for Ghost Stories.
Woo!
So join us then, won't you?
Thanks for listening.